Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. And for those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Jamie, and I have Brian on camera with me this afternoon. We also have Tara and Nikki in FC. They will be directing myself and Brent, who is out with Steph and the wildebeest, VM, and they are out doing a little bit of experimentation with bushwalk styles and to see whether we can get bushwalks up and running without any audio or signal issues. So very, very exciting times lie ahead. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a live safari. So everything that you're seeing on your monitors right now is happening right here on Djuma and Arathusa Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands. And we're also interactive. So if you do have any questions for us or any comments that you would like to make, you can do so on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. And I'm currently sitting right in Impala Plains, just having a look to see if we could maybe follow up on where Brent and Steph last had Sindile or Madiba's tracks this morning. He is now known as Madiba, he is a year-old leopard cub. He's been moving around in this area, and he's been moving around on his own quite a bit away from his mother. And they last had tracks right in the middle of this block, so I did a little bit of a circuit just to see if we could see if he's popped out anywhere. It is a blazing hot day today. It's been very, very warm. There have been quite a few people in the swimming pool already at camp this afternoon, and it's probably around 28 degrees centigrade, which is very, very hot. It's even hotter in the sun. And why I chose to wear a long sleeve shirt this afternoon, I'm not quite sure. I kind of grabbed one in a rush and didn't really concentrate on what I was doing. Now, for those of you who might have missed the morning sunrise safari, we had a little bit of an update last night from the guides at Simbambili. And it seems as though the Birmingham boys were chasing and causing friction once again with the Nkuhumas. And this coming just a day or so after they've killed the last remaining young sub-adult female who was part of that pride. Now, the Birmingham boys after that moved across into Elephant Plains, where they are currently sleeping as we speak, unfortunately just to the west of our boundary with Arathusa. And the Nkuhuma pride crossed into Buffelshoek, and Brent found their tracks crossing there this morning. So the lines have spread off, and luckily spread off into different directions. And if I do hear any reports, I'm going to be listening regularly to the Arathusa Game Drive channel. And if we do hear any reports that the Birmingham boys look as though they might move east, then we'll be heading across there. But for now, there have been reports of a herd of elephants that were at Djuma Waterhole, or seen on the Djuma Waterhole camera. And those reports came from Morning Glory, so thank you for that. I did hear them from my house, or from my room at Inger's. They were trumpeting at each other. One thing I do want to do is just check in with Brent and see what his plans are. Last time we spoke, he was thinking of walking around that area, and obviously I want to make sure I know exactly where he is before we go bumbling in a vehicle. Brent for Jamie. Are you calling me earlier? You can go ahead. Okay, copy that. For now, I'm going to leave this area. I didn't pick up on any tracks coming out, and I'm going to head across those in Glove. Now, at the moment, Brent, Steph, and the wildebeest are back into this block where they last had tracks for young Madiba, and they are searching around there to see if they can see him. I'm just making sure that there's no tracks coming out of the other side of this block. And I've noticed when he is on his own, he doesn't necessarily pick one direction and move in it. He entertains himself. So quite often I've seen him doubling back in different directions. and just moving around without any real set or seemingly set plan on where he's going. The one thing we have noticed about him is that he's had to be fairly independent very early on. His mother, Shadow, for those of you who may be joining us and haven't got any background on these particular leopards, his mother, Shadow, came into estrus much earlier than would typically be normal for female leopards with cubs. She came into estrus a couple of weeks ago and disappeared off for what was turned out to be over a week, and leaving him to fend for himself. Luckily, he's proving to be quite successful at catching little rodents and squirrels, although I believe he lost the gerbil that a couple of days ago that he caught. He's also passionately playful, and he's always an entertaining character to watch. Checking at the moment very carefully in shade, flat on the ground or in the shady spots of termite mounds. He does seem to favor those. To do for now, whilst Brent and Stefan VM are in that block, is obviously I don't want to cause too much noise in the area and distract them from hearing the important sounds that they might need to hear while they are on foot. So I'm going to continue on to where the elephants were seen, see if I can relocate that herd. We shall carry on from there. Way to go. Decisions. Both of these routes are fairly equidistant, but I think I'm going to go with the right-hand turn. The other thing that I would very much like to do this afternoon, depending on how the plan goes, is to head across to the hyena den and see what activity is happening there. Now, I haven't seen the smallest cub since I've got back to work. He wasn't out the last time that I was around that area. I'm hoping that he might be out and about and as playful and entertaining as he usually is. Been huge shifts in the lion dynamics in the lion population over the last few weeks of this area, especially with the Birmingham boys pushing the Matimba male lions down to the south. And there's been a question from OP as to whether or not the rangers and guides, are actually risking the lives of lions by showing them on this kind of program in order to give away their position to poachers. Now, the reason that this could have come to be is that while it's a WildEarth policy that we do not show rhino, and as you will all know, I'm sure, there is an enormous crisis in terms of rhino poaching within South Africa at the moment. Last year alone, there was somewhere in the region of reported cases of 1,400 rhino being poached. So South Africa in particular has a serious problem in this area. So we do not show rhino, and we do not show any of their tracks, their territorial markings. That is the approach that we have. Now, I cannot personally think of the last time I've heard of a case of a lion being poached in the Sabi Sands. Although there is an enormous crisis with poaching of lions north of South Africa, towards the central areas of Africa, that is not the case here. And in fact, by the various guides and rangers moving through this area, one of the most important missions that we're trying to accomplish is to really raise awareness about how special these animals are and how to protect them and look after them. And it is such a vital part of the South African conservation industry, is so intimately connected to tourism. There is no way that we would in any way be endangering the various lions of this reserve. And we certainly, I know from a personal standpoint, and I know from the other guide's standpoint, there is no way we would show them if we thought it was going to do them any harm at all. And that comes from a personal promise from me personally, and I can say that I will speak for the rest of the WildEarth team as well. Of course, to show you lions, we would need to have some of them on our property, which we don't at the moment. It seems as though all of the lion prides have shifted off to just across our boundaries, where we can't actually view them for now. I am hopeful though that the Birmingham boys will start moving about when it starts to get a little bit cooler. One thing we have noticed since the first early summer rains that we had on Saturday is that our general game sightings have definitely decreased, and probably the reason behind that is there's still a lot of groundwater, and I've seen more than I expected to see in the middle of blocks, which means they don't have to go too far in terms of searching for water. Have some very good news for those of you who are acquainted with our two vehicles. I'm currently sitting in the Jigger, who has so far been quite sturdy and steady since during Wendy's convalescence over the last few days. So Jack, just to let you know, Wendy is, as we speak, on her way to Hoedspruit to be thoroughly checked out by a professional vehicle mechanic, and she will hopefully be back up and running very, very soon. And it's important that we make sure that both of our vehicles are fully functional, but sometimes that just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of care, and obviously it needed to be done. Wendy's been very stoic in terms of putting up with everything that we subject these cars to in terms of driving every single day out here. But I think she just decided it was time for a break. And that just happened to coincide with the first summer rainfall. Now, I've mentioned that quite a lot because I'm just personally wondering what's going to happen over the next few months. I was very surprised by how early the rains came. I was definitely expecting a drought time. And I'm still wondering, this very often happens that you get the early spring rains. It happened last year as well. We had a nice big downpour in September and then very little after that. And I'm hoping against hope that this will not prove to be the case this year and we will get a little bit of extra rain. We certainly need it. But it only takes a couple of hot, blistering afternoons like this one before all of that groundwater starts to disappear and all of the good work of those big rains starts to dry up. Up to quarantine clearings, which I'm going to bypass and loop around some of the drainage lines. It sounded to me this afternoon that the elephants were moving south from the dam once they'd left the dam. I'm going to start by following up there. Birds are quiet this afternoon. I was driving down this road after the sunrise safari this morning with Viam, just after we'd closed the show, and we happened to see a lilac-breasted roller who was chasing and mobbing a turtle dove, a Cape turtle dove, which is very strange to me. I mean, I know that they can be a little bit aggressive at times, but I certainly have absolutely no idea as to why this particular roller took probably one of the least offensive birds and decided that it wasn't welcome in the area. I think because it is breeding season for most of these birds. There we go, I've got the Ellies. They are tucked away across the drainage line, so they must have somehow looped the house without me even realizing it. But luckily there's a road that runs just around there, so hopefully we can get a bit closer and have a nice look at them. They do seem to be on the move. Trying to work out my best angle of approach because there is a drainage line in the way. Let's loop round and see which particular herd this is. I'm still secretly hoping for my first view of Mr. Wrinklybottom, who I've heard so much about but have yet to officially been introduced to. I think I saw the herd that he belongs to the other morning, but I didn't see him. And it was in a very, very thick block on quite a windy, cloudy day, so I didn't want to bother them too much. For those of you who aren't too sure what I'm talking about, Mr. Wrinkly Bottom is a baby elephant with a very large personality, apparently. He likes to come and do little dances in front of the car. So I'm secretly hoping that this is who we've got now. Amazing how much moisture the ground has still retained, despite the fact that it's been completely dry since Saturday. The soil there is still fairly waterlogged. It's most impressive. Okay, Ellies, let's see how we can get to you. I know that this block starts to open up a little bit further on, so I'm going to go past them and loop back in around. It is one of those advantages of getting to know an area a little bit better. It's always a bit tricky when you start, but it helps a lot to spend a bit of time out in the bush, and then you get to know where there are good places to get your vehicle in. One thing about this area is that it is a seep line, so we've got to be careful about off-roading. Hello zebbies, zebras and elephants, how lovely. Stop while we have a moment with the zebras. Got quite a small herd here, and it looks to me to be a young bachelor herd. That's of zebras. Hello boy. And I'm hoping that once the rains do come, some of the zebra will stick around. Might decide to move further south towards the southern rivers, so towards the Sand River, where grazing, summer grazing, might be a little bit more fruitful for them. My prediction will probably be, if we do get big rains, we will see less and less zebra for a while, but that doesn't last forever. And the Ellies, just to give you an idea of where we are just out of view, just behind and to the right of the zebra. So they are around. There's also a squirrel shouting off in the distance. Just want to sit for a moment, listen to what he has to say. And that to me doesn't carry the hint of serious alarm that usually accompanies a leopard or a lion sighting by a squirrel. I think it's probably to do with, quite possibly even to do with another squirrel that he's shouting at. Now, as wonderful as these zebras are, I do want to get closer to the Ellies before we quite possibly lose them into the drainage line that's on the other side. And there is an Ellie just above where you can see the zebra's shoulder or the middle of its back. I just saw the tail swish. Maybe it'll swish again. There you go. There's the bottom moving off right at the top of your screens, right in the middle. That's where the Ellies are. I want to, you can always come back and have a look at these beautiful zebra in a moment. Let's try and get to the elephants. And I've just popped my car into low range for two reasons. One, we're going off-road, and we're going off-road quite close to, not in a seat line, but quite close to a seat line. And two, it keeps the revs down, so we don't stress out the animals in any way. I also don't particularly want to drive off-road in this area. I don't want to drive over some of the plant life that's there, which I will come back and show you in a moment. There's a lot of baboon's tail growing here, so I'm going to move around that. Oh, and I'm always so excited to see elephants. They really are special to me. I love spending time with them. There's something infinitely calming about the presence of a large elephant, and infinitely entertaining about the presence of a little one. I'm trying to loop my way ahead of the herd. Get them front on. This is not the best view just yet, but they are making their way towards us. I don't want to crash forward too much into her personal space. At the moment, only got a visual of 3 of them. She's currently munching on those baboon's tail, which I mentioned I didn't want to. I'm not sure if you picked up on that, but there was a nice low rumble from this big female here. The rest of the herd is here. They've moved off into quite a thick part of this drainage line. And if this lot decide to go the same way, then we probably wouldn't be the best idea to go and follow them. We'll have to loop around and catch them coming out the other side. A couple of younger ones. And a very tiny, probably around 2.5-year-old at the back there. Hello, big girl. They're just catching the green shoots of the baboon's tail. She is on the move again, and I think that rumble was to tell the youngster to come with her. And that youngster is probably around 5 years old or so. It's got the beginnings of its permanent tusks coming through. Maybe even a bit older. Just because I know that area fairly well and it opens up beautifully on the other side. And there's a bit more in terms of feeding potential. There you can see the little one also enjoying the green shoots of the baboon's tail. Oh, there's nothing like sitting near an elephant when it makes that low frequency communications rumble. It can be so special. Youngsters seemingly reluctant to follow on behind the adult, particularly this little one in the back, but maybe sometimes it takes a little bit more time and coordination to really make the most of the feeding opportunities available to you. There goes Mom. And you can see how thick it is just in front of her. Obviously, we're not going to go crashing after a breeding herd of elephants there. I'm also just going to hop onto the Game Drive channel just to let people know that, in particular, I'm thinking of Brent, Steph and Liam. Depending on where they've chosen to go walking next, I just want them to know that there is a breeding herd of Ellies making its way towards them. Just want to double check the direction of the drainage line. Just have to wait for the conversation on the Game Drive channel to finish. Just going to get us into a slightly clearer position, in particular because I'd like to have a look at some of the youngsters. Let's shift around so we can get our glimpse of them before they disappear into that thick bush there, although hopefully to re-emerge on the other side. And while I do that, let me just take this opportunity to call this in. Stations I've got Shlambi and Love here, Finns Road, mobile south towards Women's Cup Line. Just make our way in nice and slowly and calmly. Let's just have a look at the little individual that's feeding on the baboon's tail there. I want to chat a little bit about his tusks and about aging little elephants. Now you can see he's just got the points starting to come through. And Lindsay wanted to know, at what age do elephants start developing their tusks, or which time do they start appearing? And the wonderful thing that not many people know about little baby elephants is that they have, first of all, they get a set of milk tusks, because tusks are, after all, teeth, and like most baby mammals, they'll have a chance to just have tiny little tusks that will then fall out, and they will then grow their permanent tusks at around sort of 5 years old. So those milk tusks will start developing around 6 months old and then fall out. And if we can maybe, when this little one to the left of me starts to move through, although he's just hiding at the moment, but maybe we can have a look. I can just see the tiny points of his milk tusks showing through. Oh, he's going to disappear. Stop, stop, little one. I could just see them when he had his head tilted towards me. They're quite well hidden now. You can just see them poking out. And somebody is trying to call me on the Game Drive channel. There you can see just a little bit of the milk tusk poking through, and that will soon be replaced by permanent tusks. This isn't that young of an elephant now that I'm looking at it, 2.5 to 3. And they will then, once their permanent tusks come out, they will then continue to grow throughout their lives. Just bear with me for 1 second. I just want to get hold of Craig. He's trying to get hold of me. Yeah, Craig, standing by. Oh, good afternoon. I'm good, thanks. And you? Negative, not as far as I know. I know that he had tracks for Shadows Bontuan, south of Power Lines Road, somewhere between Impala Plains and Power Lines Road. I think he might be following up in that area now. Okay, copy. I'm with Shlomo and Lov now, but I'll follow up later. Sorry guys, just taking a moment to listen to Craig's update. He's just telling me that apparently he heard alarm calls in the drainage line in the Mulwati as he was making his way up Twin Dams, but he couldn't go and investigate because he was surrounded by probably this particular herd of elephant. But they've moved off now, so I think he's going to follow up from there. I'm going to loop around one more time and see if we can get one last visual of them as they start to move off. I'm quite surrounded by the baboon's tail plants that they are eating, so I'm going to try and duck and weave my way around them. Elephants are amongst some of the most incredible mammals that are out here in terms of their levels of their knowledge and understanding. And we were talking about the fact that the babies have milk teeth that push through, and then the permanent teeth that push through. And those of you who do have babies, or in the case of pet puppies or kittens, furry babies, you will know that at that time all they want to do is chew things when their teeth are coming through. Now, it's just the same with baby elephants. So it does cause them a level of irritation and discomfort that upsets them a little bit. And they're very, very clever, because what they will do is they will go and find a plant with astringent properties. So something like a silver cluster leaf, which we have in this area, as well as the spike thorn trees. And I've spoken before about what it tastes like to eat those. It almost sucks away your saliva. And it's got a very, very astringent feel. It makes your mouth go a little bit numb. And the baby Ellies have learned that this is a really good way of relieving the pain in their mouths when their teeth start to come through. So how amazing is that? They even know how to treat their own medical complaints. I've also read about elephants consuming tambuti trees, which are highly, highly toxic to people. But if they're feeling a little bit sick, they've got some form of stomach complaints, they will go and purge themselves by eating tambuti trees. So really quite phenomenal creatures. This is a very, very large herd of elephants. They're moving, I can see them moving off in the distance all around me. I'm sticking with this particular group because we've had a nice view of them so far. But there's still a distinct possibility that this could be Wrinkly Bottom's herd. Hello, big girl. And that's what the low frequency rumbles are that we've been hearing. There's just communication between them, between the herd members. Hello, little one. And those rumbles are a fantastic form of low frequency communication between the herd members. So although this group has stayed back a little bit from the rest of the herd, which have already moved through the drainage line and up to the other side, they all know where they are. Now Lynn was watching and has heard that the elephants' low frequency rumbles can be heard by other elephants up to 7 miles away, which for those of us who work in kilometers is probably about 15 to 16 kilometers away. And that's absolutely true, and in some cases it can be even further, so 20 to 40 kilometers. There's even some scientists who claim that it can travel up to even more than that, so more than 50 kilometers in distance, which is more than, quick maths, 20 odd miles. And the reason behind that is because it is such a low frequency rumble. So they create the ones that we've heard now at the moment while they're moving through this area, but they can actually produce rumbles in their chest that are even lower in frequency that the human ear can't even pick up on. They are so low. And because they are so low, it means that the wavelengths they are producing are much, much longer and can travel much further distances. That's why whale sounds are so deep as well, because they travel the furthest if they are low frequency sounds. And you have to wonder about the connection between the largest land mammal in this area versus the largest sea mammal. They seem to have adopted very similar approaches to low frequency, long distance communication. I do just want to get onto the game drive. I want to just get into contact with Brent, who is probably in the block a little bit to the west of me, just to let him know that these elephants have now changed direction and are very much in the way, on their way towards him. Now, we've been talking about the low frequency rumbles, and Gilly was telling us about the experience that she had whilst watching Mark, who is one of the previous presenters of WildEarth. And apparently the elephants all paused mid-step and picked up the low frequency communication through the soles of their feet, and then continued on walking 10 seconds later once the rumbles were over. And Gilly, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were wondering if I've ever experienced this kind of communication, and I most definitely have in the past. I've seen them do it several times over. I've also seen their reactions where you can just tell that the herd members, even though it's not a sound that you can hear, you can tell that the herd members are communicating to each other whilst interacting with you. And I had that once where I was surrounded by elephants, and it was like somebody had flicked a switch and they all went completely still and silent and stopped to have a look at me. I'm just making my way back towards the road. This is quite a large herd of elephant, and I can see more of them heading into a more nice open area. So I'm going to go and see if we can catch up with them there first. And while I do that, let me try once again to get hold of either Steph or Brent. Brent for Jamie. Back to the road, and we can loop around and catch up with these Ellies on the other side. Now, it seems as though Brent and Stefan are now on their way back to fix up some signal issues, so they're no longer walking in this area. However, Craig is once again trying to get hold of me, so let me just answer him quickly. Yeah, standing by. Okay, copy that. Craig, Brent's having some signal issues, so they've gone back towards DRC. It sounded like in the middle of the block between Impala Plains and Power Lines Road. Let's loop around to the entrance to the old hyena den and see if we can catch these Ellies from there. There's lots of little baby elephants in this herd. I've seen all of them ranging from about what looked like about 2 years old all the way up to 8 or 9. And while we're making our way back towards the herd from a different direction, Isabella, who is 4 years old, wanted to know if baby elephants go to school. Now, Isabella, welcome to the Sunset Safari. It is wonderful to have you with us, and I hope you're enjoying seeing the little Ellies as they move through. Now, Isabella, they don't go to school in the way that human beings go to school, but they still do a lot of learning, and they'll learn not just from their mothers, who teach them everything they know about what they can eat, where they should drink, where to sleep, what's safe, what to be scared of, when to listen, but they'll also learn from their aunties and their older sisters and their older brothers. They learn so much from each other. And when they get to be a little bit older, so once they start to see other babies being born, then they'll also start to teach those younger babies and look after those younger babies themselves. So it's a very, very tight-knit family, and so you could almost think of them as being homeschooled. And what an amazing schooling experience that must be. More Ellies here. They have moved through the drainage line. Driving becomes a little bit more tricky on this road after the rains. See if we can get a nice clear view of the rest of the herd. They spread out all the way through this block. Some of them are quite well tucked away in the drainage line as well. Again, lots and lots of baboon tail that I don't want to drive over. Hello guys. Let's see if we can do this carefully. It is such a cool experience, just sitting in the middle of quite a nice view in this area, and everywhere I look I see a different group of Ellies moving through. Definitely one of my favorite things to experience. Let's make sure I don't go squishing any of this special plant. Let's just stop here for one moment, just to... I can't actually push any further without doing a bit of damage, which I don't want to do. But they are making their way towards us. And so far I've done a rough count in my head, and I've counted probably about 12 adults and somewhere in the region of 6 babies, so it is quite a big herd. I'm not sure if this is the same herd that was seen on the Djuma Dam camera. Perhaps if you guys could let me know how many came down to the dam there. I suspect it is. Oh, I'm just going to casually lift and roll over an entire tree to get to something at the base. And it's always an important lesson when you watch an elephant do something like that, as to how incredibly strong they really are. This is not a particularly large individual, but she decided that there was something there that she really wanted, and she was going to get it. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I was trying to get hold of Brent just to make sure that the bushwalk team were aware of the fact that there were Ellies moving towards them. And I was doing that just as a precaution because I know that between Brent and Steph, one of them definitely would have heard the Ellies approaching, and they are approaching very slowly. They're feeding, they're making quite a bit of noise. But if they had been encountered on foot, it would very much depend on the situation. Now, probably what would happen if they had encountered them on foot, as I said, it depends on the situation. So it depends on the distance and it depends on the direction of the wind. It is more preferable to approach elephant breeding herds on foot if you really have to, or if you have been approached by them. It's much more preferable to have it on a still afternoon rather than a windy day, especially if the wind is swirling, because not only is their sense of smell incredibly sensitive, but they're also just that little bit more on edge on windy days. It makes them a little bit grumpy and a little bit more volatile. But most important, it's important to remember to have safe ground to retreat to, and having a nice drainage line like the one that we're at now in between you, maybe using a little bit of extra height on a termite mound or a big tree. And the best way, of course, to view them is without them even realizing that you're there, which means some stealthy creeping, possibly keeping your shape down low to the ground. And in my experience, when I have been spotted by breeding herds, they do come up to investigate, especially the older females, and they start to form very defensive behavior. So they'll form a tight ring with the babies at the back. They'll come and stand between you, the threat, and their babies. And what often helps to diffuse that situation, it does very much, is entirely circumstantial, but what you can do is just duck down slightly, and that immediately converts your posture from the threatening human bipedal shape to something a little bit lower and less threatening. And that's generally been my approach with breeding herds. Of course, it then is dependent on how they respond from there, because sometimes you do need to make yourself a little bit bigger and shout a bit if they start to come too close. The other thing that I have learned in terms of elephant sightings on foot is that it's very important not to surprise them. Now, for animals this big, you'd be surprised at how fast they can move and how easily they can sneak up on you when you're out in the bush. And if you do hear them coming and you know that there is a moment of sort of, not collision, but they are going to come straight towards you and there is no chance of you remaining unseen, then the last thing you want to do is surprise them at the last minute when they're too close to you. And in that case, you step out and actually present yourself to the elephants. Make sure that they know that you are there in very good time at a nice far distance, so that they can then choose if they want to change their route or how they want to respond. It's far better than surprising or sneaking about. Very often animals get a little bit suspicious if they know that you're there but you're trying to hide and you're trying to whisper. And it's in certain circumstances, reading their body language, it's better to present yourself to them. And this little baby's probably still very young, probably in the region of about 1.5 to 2 years old. Now, I mentioned earlier that elephants have a great way of treating their upset stomachs by consuming tambouti trees, which acts as gives it a sort of a purgative effect. And Tessa from Toronto, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You've asked a question that I don't know the answer to, and that's whether or not elephants throw up. Now, I would think not, just in terms of their body structure. But I'm just sitting here thinking about it. I'm really not sure. I don't think so. I'm trying to think of the structure of their stomachs, of their intestines. I haven't even really seen an elephant with diarrhea. So that's a brilliant question. I might have to go and look that up. And maybe those of you with access to the World Wide Web, in a situation where I don't, can maybe have a look and see if there are any recorded cases of elephants throwing up. Because that is a truly fascinating situation. And you can send through any feedback on that subject to #SafariLive on Twitter, or through to questions@wildearth.tv. And naturally, I'm very curious to hear what the answers are. I'm just trying to picture it, and it's the most absurd image. Brian, can you imagine an elephant trying to throw up? Shame. I think it would be very tricky to do. Now, this little group that we've been sitting with isn't the clearest. They are all slowly making their way to a more open area. I'm just double checking behind me to see where the rest of the group has gone. And there's more coming up along the drainage line as well. You can see that these Ellies are not in too much of a hurry. They're just doing a late afternoon feeding session. And at this time of the year, it's very common for them to be as spread out as far as they are. And that's because there's not much nutritional value at the moment in the plant life around us. So they need to spread out and make sure they're not all concentrated and feeding in one place. Now, we're on the crest of a hill, so it's maybe not the best place for it, although there are a couple of knobthorns here. In the next sort of 2 or so weeks, or 3 weeks, the knobthorns are going to start growing their leaves. They're one of the first trees to get their brand new spring leaves. And at that point, there'll be a lot of bulls moving through along with the females. They're going to push over some of the bigger trees. And then you will start to see the whole herd moving around one tree and feeding off it. So you'll start to see them be a little bit more concentrated in terms of their feeding. Now, our Ellies have tucked themselves away into a drainage line, and I can see another individual behind me, so I'm going to make my way that side and see if we can get a nice clear view. Now, this morning on the sunrise safari, Liam spotted the first sort of green grass shoots that have started to come through. And of course, we've got all of these baboon tail plants, which I promise I will stop and talk about once we're done with the Ellies, because they are really fascinating plants. And Laura's picked up on the fact that it has started to go green, and the bush has been looking over the last few weeks very brown, very sort of blue-grey in colour, and it's nice to start seeing the fresh new growth for all of these animals, and it must come as such a huge relief to them. And I'm not sure whether I was imagining it, but I swear after the first rains, that first afternoon and the first morning after that when I went out, everything seemed to be in really high spirits. And I might just have been imagining it because that's what I was thinking about, but I think that the animals were very, very happy. stop and have a look at this Ellie here, who's making short work of a tree that I need my binoculars in order to identify. Looks like a combination of a guarri and something else growing there. Combination of blue and magic guarri. Not often you see them feeding on that. And playing a little bit of hide and seek with us as well. And this little Ellie who's coming through now watched us very suspiciously for a while as we made our entrance and didn't seem to be too keen on our arrival. Obviously relaxed now, and that is such a fun age, that sort of 5 to 8 year old range that this Ellie falls into, because they are very, very playful and they are still learning the various boundaries. So they like to either come up and say hello or give you a little bit of a fun charge. Not that there's ever a fun charge, but if you could describe it as that, just a way of testing out their level of influence on their world around them. I'm curious to see if he's going to come and say hello to us at some point. He's going to be brave enough. I'm just going to answer Craig's radio call for a moment. Standing by. Copy that, thanks. When I'm done with these and glove, then I'll come and give you a hand in that area. You can see the characteristic flapping of the ears. It is nice and warm, even now. And I think this will probably be one of the first evenings where I haven't needed a jacket with me on drive. I've still got it, just in case, never fear. That's a very sweet little image. 2 Ellies tucked away behind a guarri bush, having quite the snack. And we mentioned earlier what a bizarre image it is to imagine an elephant throwing up. I really am very curious about this situation now. I'm dying to know if elephants actually do or if they don't. But Tony has suggested that if they do, then it would be advisable to stand well back. And I do think he is absolutely right about that. Hello, big girl. Where are you off to? Now, I believe that we have a viewer named Steve. Oh, are you going to come through, little one? Sorry, Steve. I promise I'll get back to you in a moment. Just want to see what this little one has to say. Not much. Off again. One bodily function that the elephants have just demonstrated, as they do on a regular basis, is that they are exceptionally flatulent. Oh. Just hold on one moment, guys. I need to just hop on the radio. And I will get back to poor Steve's question. Craig for Jamie. Now, Steve has been joking that he has not had a question answered yet on WildEarth. So Brian and myself are going to break that particular pattern, and we're going to answer Steve's question about what a baboon tails plant is. He was wondering exactly what they are. So we're going to have a look at one, and we've got quite a few of them just off to my right in this area. And that is a baboon's tail plant with fresh green shoots that the elephants in this area have clearly been enjoying a great deal. And the reason it is called a baboon's tail, funnily enough, is supposedly the end of it looks a little bit like the end of a baboon's tail. Very imaginative. Personally, I don't think I've ever seen a baboon with a tail that looks like that. But the one thing about it is it's a very, very dense plant material. Now I'm looking for some dried one. It's not often that you find an old dead one. And obviously I don't want to pick a live one. I'm just listening to the Game Drive channel. Just bear with me for one moment. Now, it sounds as though Craig has located Karula around the lodge. Unfortunately, she's just ducked into the drainage line, so he has lost visual of her at the moment. But I think it's time we go and help him find her. Let's see if maybe we can give him a hand. If you go and help Craig keep an eye on her. Let's try and get out of here and move fairly quickly. And I know Karula of old. She's in that exact block where I've lost her twice before. So I'm hoping Craig can keep her for us. Craig for Jamie. Now Craig, I'd like to respond as well. If she does disappear, then maybe I can help you locate. Okay, copy. How many stations responding? Copy that. Now Steve, just to finish off with your question, because I can't actually Ferrari safari out of an elephant sighting, it's definitely going to cause some upset amongst the herd members. The baboon's tail is a great way that the Bushmen used to utilize. What they would do is they would hollow it out and they would pack it with a burning coal or a burning ember from the fire. And they would use that as a way of transporting fire from place to place. If they moved about from one night to another and they moved their camping site, then they would carry that coal so they wouldn't have to go through the somewhat labor-intensive process of starting a fire manually with 2 sticks or with some rocks. So a very, very useful plant in terms of helping them out in that respect. A little bit further out now. We can start to make our way. I do want to get there as quickly as possible. I know Karula of old now. I'm learning my lesson. And I've also learned a little bit about that block that she's in at the moment. It's the block between Mvubu and Gari cut line, which is a little bit of a nightmare at times. I'm trying to think of the fastest way. It's definitely going to be this way. As we leave these Ellies, and I am just making sure I'm not driving too fast around these corners. Obviously I don't want to bump into them whilst driving at high speed. And that is exactly why. That was a good call. I think that would have made Mommy Ellie very unhappy if we'd gone barging in here. I'm just going to stop here for a moment. I'm not going to block their path for these 2 little Ellies. Hello, little ones. You're definitely not interested in the fact that we are trying to get to Karula, are you? And just while we're looking at them, got some information about whether or not elephants throw up. Yes, hello. You're very scary. Oh, you're very big and scary. Now, apparently they have a connection between the back of their throat and into their trunk, in the same way that we do, and Jan suggests it would be unlikely that they would throw up because of the possibility of food making its way into the back of their trunk and possibly even causing an infection if it gets stuck there. And I do think that's a very valid point. They've got a very, very long nasal passage. I'm just listening with half a brain to the Game Drive channel. Rula seems to be doing her usual trick of ducking and diving. Thank you, Ellies. And there's also been a comment that elephants have been known to regurgitate water, especially females over babies, to cool them down. And that's definitely something I'd never heard about. So those comments came from John and from Deborah, and thank you for your answers. It's always great to have an audience that gives that kind of feedback. Thank you for that. I'm still going to go and look into the matter of elephant plummeting and find out what goes on there. I'm just going to take the opportunity to have a quick drink as well. It's really, really hot this afternoon. Has pointed out that Karula is probably already in the lodge area. She is a notoriously sneaky leopard, and it does sound as though both Craig and Tex have lost sight of her. The one thing about that block is it's filled with drainage lines, which I know that she knows and she likes to disappear off into. I just want to check in with Craig and see where he would like me to approach from. Craig or text for Jamie. Yeah, Craig, just wanted to check whether he wants me to come from the Gallagher shortcut side or from around the dam side. Copy that, thank you. I'll come from Gallagher shortcut. It seems as though the two guides there have lost visual of her, and I must say I sympathize with that completely, especially in that area. But let's go see if we can, if having a third set of eyes, or third and fourth set of eyes, counting Brian, might give them a little bit of a hand. Listening to the Game Drive channel because the situation is changing all the time. exactly where there was a suggestion that she was, which is in the drainage line. It sounds like in front of the lodge. So I'm making my way around to this side. While we make our way into that drainage line, it seems as though Brent and Steph are back up and running with the bushwalk. So we're going to cut across to them, and I will be back with you a little bit later, hopefully with Karula, who hasn't been seen in quite a while. Welcome back, and Brian and myself are still on our mission to get to Karula. I'm just going to get into contact with Craig about his exact position. Let's see if we can get some clarification. Ooh. Hello, Ellies. Oh, elephants everywhere today. Come back to you guys. We've got a leopard to find at the moment, but you know, just stick around. We'll be back with you later. Start keeping our eyes peeled, Brian. She was moving in this direction. Craig said she was in a drainage line. There's quite a few of those around here. Just check in there. One nice thing about the fact that she's on the move, although she is so sneaky, that hopefully something will spot her and give us alarm calls to let us know exactly where she is. Standing by. Okay, copy. I'm just coming from the shortcut onto Mvubu now. Exactly how far up Mvubu were you? Okay, copy. I wasn't there for that sighting. Is it more towards the dam or further north along the river? my way around as well. There we go, that's where she was. Now Craig tells me that she's moved west across the drainage line, and he suggested to me that it's going to be almost impossible to go across. Standing by. Yeah, that's affirmative. If you can, that'd be great. It sounds as though Brent is going to come and give us a hand as well. So we've got all hands on deck, coming to search for the mysterious and unbelievably sneaky Karula. Now Craig says I won't be able to cross through this drainage line, and I'm sure he's absolutely right. But what I have learned about Karula is that she can be incredibly sneaky about doubling back. I'm just wondering whether it's not worth poking my nose in from this side. If she thinks that everybody's heading off that way, maybe there's a chance she might double back. Let's just double check this corner and then we'll see from there. I think that's what we're going to do. Let's just stop for one moment and just listen. Now I'm listening for alarm calls off to the west of me. Here, Craig making his way south. Can definitely hear Craig making his way south. Now, if Brent is making his way in from the west, I haven't picked up on any alarm calls, but I think what I'm going to do is double back and just see if she pulls her usual trick. I think that she's got very, very good at giving alarm calling other animals the slip. She moves in one direction and then changes her mind and goes the opposite way. And that's what I'm going to take a chance and do. Especially since Craig is on it from that side. It never fails to amaze me how incredibly sneaky Karula can be. If I don't have any luck from here, then I'm going to loop back around the way that we came and see if we can't follow up from that angle. Now I have been thrown into a dilemma because apparently there's lots of things alarm calling at the Djuma Dam camera right now, and I don't think she would have got from here to all the way there that fast. But let's just stop and listen and see what we can hear. All very, very quiet. Now, I don't think that she would have made her way. Okay, copy that. Thanks, Craig. I'll try and follow up from the western side and keep you updated. Okay. Craig says that he cannot get his vehicle in on that side of the drainage line. I'm still going to go with what is essentially gut instinct and try and approach from this side. And I'm going to ask Brent to approach from the other side, and maybe we can catch her somewhere in the middle. It is a network of drainage lines, this block. Let's just see if my gut instinct is right about where she's gone. Where did I see Craig's tracks? Go. Standing by. Copy that, thank you. Brent's made a different suggestion as to how we can approach this. And he is speaking from a bit more experience in this area than I have at the moment. He's been tracking Karula through this block, or has tracked Karula through this block several times over. And his suggestion, because he is on his way elsewhere, be to go to the shortcut just south of Buffelshoek cut line and check around there. He says that he's tracked her crossing in that direction several times over, but we need to move fast to get there, because there's nothing like a leopard for covering ground when she wants to. Now, when I first started working for WildEarth, Karula was I think within my first or my second week here, Karula was mating with an unknown male up in Buffelshoek, who we think might have been seen by Brent a couple of weeks later. He's very, very skittish. He's not all that comfortable with being seen. And we're going to start to wonder if Karula's going to be hiding cubs away in the next month and a half or so. Now, Donna, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were ever wondering if Karula has lost cubs that we know about? And I would say it's more than likely that she has, even if we haven't known about it. I haven't heard about it, but I would say in terms of the number of, she is a fantastic mother. She's produced several successful, viable litters, from what I've heard. But even then, there is an incredibly high mortality rate with cubs. I think I did hear about at least one of them that was killed by a hyena. Now, let me just think for a moment about my approach here. I'm going to go along the fire break, which is a bit more rocky, a bit more bumpy, but keeps us closer to where she was last seen. Now, the wonderful thing about the WildEarth viewers is that there is a wealth of background knowledge on these amazing animal characters. And Billy tells us that Karula loves to, or has in the past, shown a tendency to hide her cubs in the vicinity of lodges, and was in one case, and I believe that was actually in the DRC, which is where most of the WildEarth staff are staying at the moment. She has been known to pull down laundry and roll in it. And Billy has also confirmed that Karula did lose her last set of cubs or her last cub to a hyena, or 2 hyenas. So she has lost cubs in the past. It is one of those unfortunate realities for leopard mothers. The survival rate, or the mortality rate rather, of their cubs can be very, very high. It's a very tough life out here. It is unbelievably thick in here. And we are once again on our own in our search for Karula. My eyes very, very carefully peeled. And I think I've acquired a passenger, just a stick of some kind that's hooked to ride. See if we can get rid of that. There we go. It's just tucked under the wheelbase there. It's fine, we have removed it. It was an unwelcome addition to our Karula searching mission. Now, Karula has been, from the sounds of it, quite a phenomenal female leopard in terms of the success of raising her cubs. And we are constantly seeing the different offspring and then their offspring as well. So Shadow, for those of you who were speaking a little bit earlier about the young male leopard cub and his mother, Shadow. Shadow is Karula's daughter. There's also Kunuma and Quarantine, who are regularly in this area. And I'm sure that there are others as well. And Eileen, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Eileen was wondering why it is that they tend to stay so close to where Karula is. And that's a combination of reasons. First of all, it's very, very common for female leopards for their daughters to hang about very close to them. And they will, although they will tend to become independent quicker than the male cubs, They will very often stick around their mother's territory. It is even common for her to shift her territorial boundaries ever so slightly to allow them to move in and establish their own home range and territorial boundaries. Generally though, they will try and stay out of each other's way. But with the male cubs, they will obviously, they don't want to stick around in an area where they could be mating with relatives of theirs, so they will disperse quite far once they reach the right age. But it takes them quite a lot longer than the females to become independent and even to become large enough to be capable of defending an area from other male leopards. So at the moment, Quarantine and Kanuma, who are, I believe, in the region of 4 to 5 years old, they have been hanging around a great deal with them, or around their mother, not necessarily with her, but around her territory. And I even saw, the one day I even tracked with Scott, where we'd had Karula the day before, and then we tracked Kanuma all the way up to Buffelshoek Dam. But having had a look at their tracks, it looks as though he did at some point in the evening meet up with Welcome back, and we do apologize for that situation. We just had to switch to battery, and at some point during the next hour or so, we are going to have to switch over batteries, just because we've only got 54 minutes left. However, I have hope against hope at the moment. We're going to try and do this. We're going to try and get in here. I think the go-away bird has just given away Karula's position. So far it's just the one calling. But it's thick in here. I'm going to try and get us in. Stop calling again now. But this is almost exactly where Brent suggested her regular movements might bring her out. So let's see. I'm definitely hopeful. Maybe she's tucked away in here. It is unbelievably thick in this block. Termite mound just off to the left of me that I wouldn't mind being able to get to. The go-away bird has gone quiet again, unfortunately. So he's not giving us any more advice. Try not to put Brian in a buffalo thorn. Sorry Brian, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. Go nice and slowly around this termite mound. It is so thick here, and she can be so very sneaky. Going to stop here for one moment and listen again. The go-away bird has been fluttering around and giving alarm calls, and Mary was wondering if when we're walking in the bush, does that have some kind of impact on the alarm calling animals? So will the birds or the squirrels react to our presence? And the answer depends on the species involved. That grey go-away bird that was calling earlier will definitely react to the presence of people on foot, and more than once they have given away my position and come and sat above my head and shouted "go away" at me for several minutes at a time. Geese also have been known to do it to me when I've been walking along rivers, and then the odd little rattling cisticola also follow behind you an alarm call. So not always ideal. It's very, very thick here. This would put us almost exactly where she would be coming out, but that go-away bird now has gone very, very quiet. And typically when they do respond to leopard, they go on about it for quite a while. So maybe it was shouting at something else. I will say that I've never been alarm called at by squirrels before. Or not that I've been aware of. Oh, it's very quiet now. I think that grey go-away bird might have fooled me. Or Karula has fooled it. She does seem to move through the bush with a remarkable absence of alarm calls, in my experience. You can see how absolutely beautiful the sky is. Almost looks as though we're getting another cloud layer in, which surprises me. Look how beautiful that sky is. Really is quite spectacular this evening. Now, let me loop around. Come on, Karula, you sneaky, sneaky thing. Where are you hiding? Knobthorn there, Brian. I don't want to leave you hanging in the tree and drive off. Actually, don't want to leave my shoulder in the tree either. And as we crash and bang our way out of this block, not too far from the road, we're going to have to make a decision very soon as to which direction I think Karula might have gone in, and see if maybe we get lucky on the road. This is roughly where Brent suggested double check. Now we've had a couple of very quiet drives recently, and Kathleen has pointed out that a lot of the animals seem to be very skittish after the rains, and was wondering if that would apply to leopards as well. And I think that generally the the skittish responses tend to be inspired by the wind rather than the rain itself. So we have had a couple of windy days, and the animals have been a little bit more on edge. But in terms of leopard sighting, it could well be connected to the general game sightings. So the animals are moving in the middle of the blocks because there's lots of groundwater available, and therefore the leopards are hunting in the middle of the blocks and possibly not even having to move too far. I do just need to get hold of Brent, as we do need a battery delivered to us at some point. evening sky, as you can see from all of the colors. I'm going to try and find a nice clear spot to stop so we can have a look at this exquisite sunset before I make my way across to the hyena den. I definitely haven't given up on the fact that Karula may well still be somewhere in this block. Just double checking once again. It's always a bit of a guessing game as to where Karula is going to come out. Going to stop for one moment for two reasons. One is that the sky is looking absolutely spectacular, and two is that I just want to give it one last chance to listen for alarm calls. I just want to hop onto the Game Drive channel to Brent just to let him know what's happening with our battery life. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, just to let you know, with our battery life. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, just to let you know, we are down to 43 minutes in terms of battery. I'm going to head across to the hyena den now. Just letting Brent know what's happening. Unfortunately, there's been a little bit of a situation where the spare batteries have headed off along with Wendy to be repaired. So at the moment it does look like, unfortunately, we're going to have to end the show probably about 15 minutes or so earlier than normal. But we are looking to see if maybe there's a backup plan. But it looks as though most likely we're going to be ending 15 minutes earlier than normal this afternoon. And since that is the case, although this is quite the spectacular sunset, I think it's time to head across to the hyena den before it gets too dark and see if we can spend a little bit of time with them. Now, the reason that I'm not driving frantically through the block looking for Karula is that it is just quite simply too thick. And my experience now with her has taught me that she has numerous drainage lines in that block that she likes to move along and disappear through. And I quite honestly would not have the first idea as to where to start. So although we've checked where Brent suggested she might cross, we still haven't heard anything except for one lone and quite possibly crazy go-away bird alarm calling, and even he has gone quiet. But we are very, very close to the hyena den. We're actually on the same road, so at least if we can spend some time watching the little hyenas if they are out and about, we can also try and listen for alarm calls at the same time and see if maybe they alert us to where she might be. Just gonna grab some water. And apparently missed my mouth completely. Oopsie. And this new active hyena den that Steph has found is also in Karula's favorite block. on Djuma. It's obviously a good place to come if you want to hide away from the world. And Steve, once again, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Now Steve was wondering if I've managed to acquire any more feathers to further antagonize James, and whether or not I've got any to add to my hat. And the answer is not yet. I'm going to choose to be quite selective about the feathers I put into my hat. I have not forgotten the advice that I was given about heading across to the tree by the Djuma Dam camera and just having a look there to see if the lilac-breasted roller has dropped any feathers there. And then we shall see how the situation changes. Just making my way into the hyena den. Hello, little one. Long time no see. The little cub is out and about. I'm going to approach nice and carefully just to make sure I don't cause any distress. And while I do, you will see how incredibly thick it is around this den site. And Joyce, once summer comes and the rains do come, almost all of these trees are going to grow their leaves back to the point that this particular den site might even be slightly inaccessible. So you'll be astounded at the change of season. Most of these rather dead, brown-looking trees are in fact not dead at all, but have simply lost their leaves. Oh, you are smelly. Holy moly. Oh, this is possibly the worst smell I have experienced at this hyena den. Hello, are you coming to say hi? That is almost a joyful gallop in our direction. Obviously, this little one has been looking for some entertainment and has decided that our wheels might be a good option. Oh, how you've grown. Look at you. Look at those spots you've got. What's there? What you looking at? Now, it's amazing how brave this little individual cub is for his or her age. She'll come right up almost to the point of touching the vehicle. At that point, it was probably about 1.5 meters away, if that. And its mother is the individual that you can see at the top of the screen, there with the scar on her lower back. Now, I know that James has remarked in the past about her pungent odor, and oh my word, is he right. I'm generally not too sensitive to smells, but this is quite the aroma wafting in our direction, isn't it? Oh, have a quick chew. Oh, possibly fall down. Oh, and anal paste. So already imitating adult behavior that it will exhibit for the rest of its life. Oh, I'm so glad we decided to come this way. I haven't seen this little one in 3-4 weeks now. Yummy. We were talking earlier about elephants teething, and this little one is probably at the age where a couple of the permanent teeth might start to come through. But you can still see those little milk teeth. And I know that, oh cute, I know that many of you with puppies and kittens will know exactly how sharp little puppy or kitten teeth can be. And you can only imagine what this little one's teeth are like. I definitely wouldn't want to let him or her chew on my finger for too long. Munching away. And that's a combination of play and also quite possibly relieving some of the teething discomfort. You are so cute. And the wonderful news is that we have managed to acquire some spare batteries. So we will be completing the show to its normal time. But we do need to have them delivered, which means I just need to get hold of Brent on the Game Drive channel and let him know where we are. Stations Misikaya on Gallagher Shortcut is active. Brent for Jamie. Yeah, just let me know when you're on Gallagher Shortcut. I'll come out from the den. Thank you. So Brent is going to be our delivery man and bring them through for us. You can just see the curiosity, and in my opinion you can actually see the intelligence there as well when you watch their facial expressions. You can see all of the learning and the curiosity and the mischief in those big eyes. Oopsie daisy. Oh dear. Well done. Having a bit of an exploration. I'm just trying to see what is having a sniff around. Can't see anything in particular. I think just exploring, and I'm going to try and keep an eye on it from my angle. They are renowned for stealing the little rubber caps off the Land Rover wheels, the little oil protections and the dust protectors. And I've taken my eyes off them for the briefest moment and lost them in the past. Looked up to see a hyena cub disappearing off into the distance with a rubber cap in its mouth. They do seem to enjoy them a great deal. Now, where we are at the moment, we are almost directly opposite where Craig last had visual of Karula. He had her on the other side of the drainage line, moving through the drainage line, almost directly in this direction, maybe a little bit further to the north. Oh, roll over. That was exhausting. Now, it's very typical for all animals that are predators and in competition with each other to, when they do interact, especially to try and kill each other's cubs, as well as to cause conflicts between the adults. Sorry guys, just hold on 1 minute. I'm going to finish that thought in a moment. Yeah, standing by. Okay, copy that, thank you. This little Mapimpan's been quite entertaining. I will move out when we're done here. Copy that, perfect, thank you. I don't really want to leave this cub just yet, especially not in this beautiful light. So I've asked Brent to leave the battery in a tree for us, and we'll go and collect it. Of course, it is a matter of making sure I know which tree it's in, and maybe not letting it get too dark before we go looking. Anyway, so I was talking about the fact that Karula is probably moving through this area as we speak, and there's a lot of interaction between... Oh, cute, man. Jeez, that's cute. Interaction between the predators. And Ramon from the Netherlands was wondering why it is we never see leopards or hyenas at a den site, because not leopards and hyenas, leopards and lions at den sites, because surely this would be a brilliant place to hunt and kill hyenas. And the answer to that is mainly because the hyena cubs have very cleverly excavated tiny little tunnels in the termite mound that only they will be able to fit into. So an adult leopard or an adult lion would not be able to go in. And what's more, these cubs are not completely defenseless. They do have very sharp teeth, and any investigating leopard that did manage to squeeze its way in would probably be met with quite a savage bite, and would have much less maneuverability in those tunnels than a little cub like this one. So I think over the years, leopards and lions have learned that a hyena den, although it seems that way, to sit in ambush, is probably not the best place to come and hunt hyenas. Oh. Come to say hello to Mom. You even see the little tail wagging, not quite wagging in the way we understand cats and dogs to wag, but definitely indicating enjoyment. Standing by. Copy that, thank you. So Brent has kindly put the batteries in the tree for me, and his description of the placement was one that you might have to stand on tiptoes for. So that was very kind of him to take advantage of his height to put something what I would imagine will be just out of my reach. But I suppose that's a good thing. It means it's out of the hyena's reach as well. Where are you going wandering to, little one? It's dangerous out there. There's a leopard wandering about. Oh yes, a little bit too far away from Mom. Maybe a bit too brave. Starting to get the frog calls as well. Hear an eastern olive toad every now and again. That very typical ribbit sound. Oh, look at those teeth. Just listening to another vehicle moving through the area. Oh, you are so cute. Now, Jackie's Cross, you were wondering how old this little cub is. I'm just thinking back to what I learnt about the various cubs from the viewers. Jackie's schoolroom class was wondering how old this cub is. Hold on one moment, I just need to think this through. The oldest one was born in December, the middle two were born in February, and I believe this little one was born sometime in May. So we're looking at about 3.5 months old at the moment. Oh, you can see how loving and gentle Mom can be. You think about the phenomenal power of her jaws. She's up just listening and having a sniff as well, but the cub is far more interested in playing with her. Almost see the put upon expression on her face. Hello, Mommy. Oh, she is pungent, but that was very special. That's the first time I've had her come so far up close to the car. She just came to investigate us, bringing a smell combination that can only be, it's almost fishy in a way. It smells a little bit like a combination of urine and rotting fish. Not entirely the most pleasant smell I've ever smelled. Hello, little one, what you doing? Hey. I just need to lean across and see. Hello. What you doing? What you doing? You're up to no good. Yes, that's what I thought. Highly, highly entertaining little thing. Now, when we first arrived, the hyena cub came bounding up to us with honestly what I would describe as excitement. I think it was feeling a little bit bored and we provided some entertainment. Now, I've also made several comments about how smelly it is around here, and Stephanie tells me that she had a little bit of a giggle imagining the cub coming up and saying, or commenting as to how smelly these humans are on the back of the vehicle. Oh, there we go. Now I'm going to need to reposition, and I'm going to take that opportunity to go and collect our batteries before it starts to get too dark. Now let's go get that battery quickly before it gets too dark. And I'm very curious to see exactly how high is high that Brent has put it. And then we will come back to this den and spend a bit more time with this very special little cub. It's an unbelievably endearing little character. Oopsie. Let's not take the entire tree with us. Now, apparently there are a lot of people who would love to come and spend some time with this cub and play with it, and it is absolutely adorable, but I bet it has a bite like nothing else. I know when my puppy had her baby teeth, her little milk teeth, as much fun as it was to play with her, she could definitely quite easily break the skin. And she did on a regular basis. I managed to catch a tree in my wheel well that is rather stubbornly sticking with us. There we go. I think we've got rid of it now. I don't think we need to drag that all the way out. As we make our way out, Brent tells me he placed it in a Combretum apiculatum, and I'm quite relieved he didn't choose to put it in a slightly more obscure tree. He picked an easy one. I would not have put it past him to tell me that he'd put it in some a tree that is completely unknown to me. There it is. On the bank. Here we go. Let me just hop out so I can grab them. Oh, it's not that high. I was expecting far worse. I was thinking you were going to get me to climb the tree. Aha! Got them both. Brent to the rescue. We've got our possible replacement battery packs. So what we are going to need to do is possibly at some point cut our feed just for the briefest moment so that we can do a quick battery change. And we're actually going to try and do that now, Brian? Okay. We're just going to cut feed for the moment. We won't be gone for too long. We're just going to plug in the new batteries and make our way back to the hyena den. So please don't leave us. We will be back with you very, very shortly. We're just going to quickly sort out our battery issues.
Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back on the vehicle with us.
Welcome back, and as you can see, we are back up and running with our new battery. So we do owe Brent a big thank you for coming to our rescue. And all we did was a quick loop out of the hyena den, and I'm making my way back in now. Now I just need to decide which way to go. I think we're going back to where we were before. Looks as though the cub has come back out to what I basically think of as the play area around this particular den site. Now the reason that I feel comfortable coming back now whilst it is getting dark is because this little cub's mother is still around. So we can spend some time with it, with the spotlight on it, even though it is quite young, and that is purely because mom is here. My personal choice, if the mother does decide to move away, will be to leave as soon as she does, but she is lying off in the grass. I'm going to keep a close watch on the cub's behavior. If it does show any sign of distress, then obviously we won't stick around. It almost looks to me at times that it does have a little bit of a limp. And I'm not sure if it is, it's nothing too serious. And of course, the reason that we're now getting to sit with this little one is because we have managed a battery change. And Cecilia, it is indeed nice to find trees growing batteries out here. I'm sure Eugene would be thrilled if more of them could start exhibiting those signs. And of course, a money tree would be highly useful as well. I'm just watching this cub's behavior very, very carefully, and I'm dropping the light right down. I'm not shining on it. Just because he has moved up the hill, I want to see if that's in response to us or not. And if in the next minute or so it doesn't show more signs of being a bit more relaxed, then I am going to leave. And the leopard just called. Did you hear that, Brian? She's just called off to the right of me. So she moved, it sounds as though, that did sound like a female to me. It sounds as though she moved back south down the drainage line, which is exactly what I suspected she was going to do. And she's probably making her way back around one of her favorite areas around the dam. And the reason I'm not throwing the car into reverse and frantically rushing off is that it sounds to me she's right in the middle of the block. It actually sounds to me like she's right in the middle of the drainage line. And I know how thick it is in there. So I'm going to listen a couple more times to see if she calls again. Then at least I can get a little bit of a location and maybe a direction as to which way she's moving or if she's stationary. There we go. Feeling a bit more relaxed. Just a little bit tired now. Just gonna switch arms for the spotlight just to make things a bit more comfortable. Now we've got Karula calling off in the distance, and we've got this hyena clan here, and we've started to get to know them really, really well. You know, we know the individuals, we know this cub very well, we know the mother fairly well. And Skoog was wondering why it is that we don't refer to them by name. And that's very much dependent on where you are. In the area that I used to work in, we did name individual hyenas, particularly the matriarchs of the clans, and we built up ID kits for them in terms of their spot patterns. Generally in areas such as this, which is much, much larger, it's an open system, there are so many hyena that it would be almost impossible to keep track. And most of the time, if you do see them, it's a very, very, unless you're sitting in a den with the well-known females, it's a very brief sighting, often with them moving off at high speed. You don't get to sit with them. They don't really go flat in the same way that leopards and lions do. So it's a combination of management decisions, as well as the fact that if we were to name this cub now, you can see how indistinct the spot pattern is, and that although it's not going to change at all in terms of the position of the spots, it is going to look vastly different in the next year or so. So if we were going to name them, we'd certainly only name them over a year or so old, possibly even older, when their chance of survival is more guaranteed. But generally, it's not practice in the Sabi Sands to give names to hyenas. We could certainly consider naming this the Djuma clan, since their core territory seems to be right around the Djuma Dam. But that being said, Scott definitely saw the matriarch, this cub's mother, motoring her way back from all the way in Buffelshoek, across Buffelshoek boundary and then down south into Djuma. So they can move enormous distances. This is terribly cute and a really, really peaceful scene. And I would strongly advise, if we have got Karula calling quite close to the dam, I would very strongly advise keeping your eye on the dam camera this evening. There could well be happenings there. I'm just going to drop the light slightly, just because the cub is looking away very solidly. And I'm going to give this sighting another minute, and then we're going to leave him be, just because it doesn't seem to be his usual playful self, and has turned its head very resolutely away from us. Now, Gilly has picked up on the fact, or has pointed out the fact, that hyenas' back feet almost tend to point inwards at the hock, and she's seen them lying on their stomachs or on their chests with their legs crossed, their back legs crossed behind them. Now, that is very, very typical of the shape of the hyena. So because they've got these powerfully built shoulders and the much smaller hindquarters and the sloping, that very pronounced slope in their back, so it gives them that almost sloping, almost sneaky look as they move, as though they're slinking through the bush. And when we do see their tracks, and I'm sure this is something that's been pointed out to the regular viewers quite a few times, when we do see their tracks, unlike all other animals, instead of having the right front foot and then the right back foot together, they actually do what's known as a crosswalk. So yes, not only do the back feet almost seem to point inwards, they don't necessarily point inwards, but they swing inwards and across the body to meet up with where the opposite front foot has been put down. And that gives them a very energy efficient gait as they move through the bush. So they're perfectly adapted for a nomadic lifestyle and covering enormous distances, probably as a way of dealing with competition from lions. Now, I'm not too sure where the older cubs are. I haven't seen any sign of them, and I definitely haven't heard them playing on the other side of the den. there's a very good chance that they are out with their mother. They are a lot more mobile now that they are older. And Inge, you were wondering about whether or not the cub is on its own. And no, it's not. Although it is perfectly acceptable for us to sit and spotlight the cub while it's on its own, my personal feelings towards the matter are I will only do it at a den site if the mother is present. And she is here. She is, I think, unfortunately out of the range of the camera. But when we pull out of the sighting, I'll show you, I'll stop so that you can see her. But she's here, just at the base of this tree, behind the tree. And she's still there. I've been keeping an eye on her as well to make sure she doesn't sneak away while I'm not watching. But I will say that this little cub has now gone to sleep, so there's no reason for us to actually sit and shine a spotlight in its face if it's trying to sleep. I just don't think that's really appropriate. So I'm going to leave this sighting now. I'll stop on my way out to show you where Mom is. But we've had a wonderful time spent with this adorable little cub. I'm going to just turn my reverse lights on. I'm not going to turn my side lights on until we make our way out. Let me just get out of here, and then we can start following the sound of that leopard call. Who knows, maybe Karula is continuing to make her way to Galago shortcut. Let's try not to take this tree with us again this time around. Now there are lots of different diseases out here that can affect the various animals of the Sabi Sands, and we've had one question as to whether or not hyenas will carry rabies, and they absolutely will. They have been known to. There's Mom. I'm not going to stop for too long, but just to give you an idea of where she was. Mom is there, and baby was just off to her right. I'm dropping the light off her because she didn't look comfortable, and I don't feel any reason to stress her out. Now, here we go, we can turn our headlights on. Okay there, Brian? Cool. Let's see what we can see. A bit of a wire tangle here at the moment. Stand by, one moment. This is not going to work. I managed to wrap my radio around my spotlight cable about 3 or 4 times, which I don't think is going to work out well in the long run. Hopped out to get the batteries out of our Combretum apiculatum, also known as a red bush willow, which sounds far less cool than Combretum apiculatum. Ramon noticed that I was wearing shorts and was wondering if we are starting to feel the effects of, or the coming of spring, and most definitely we are. It is apparently 24 degrees centigrade at the moment. I'm actually feeling even warmer than that. but I think that's a combination of driving backwards and forwards off-road. That certainly has a way of doing a bit of a workout for one's shoulders. And what I'm going to do now, if you are wondering what my plan is, I'm going to head back onto the shortcut that I took earlier that takes us past the pumped water hole outside one of the lodges. And we're just going to take a chance and see if maybe Karula's making her way towards that drainage line. And just to continue with Ramon's question about spring, the other thing I've just noticed, it's the first time I've smelt it. There is the perfect, typical African bush summer smell tonight. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's like the smell that you get after rain, but just a little bit more intense. I'm not even sure exactly what combination of plant and soil life causes it, but it is definitely a smell that I absolutely love, and I always associate with these indescribably beautiful evenings. And as we make our way towards the drainage line where I think Karula was calling from, we have a question from Sibu Sisu, the black mamba from Hammanskraal. And Sibu Sisu went on a trip with his family to a reserve known as Dino King, which I believe is just to the north of Pretoria. I've never been there personally, but I know that the place that I used to work at when Dino King first started up, the elephants that they located or translocated into the reserve came from the reserve that I was working on. Now, Sibu Sisu tells us that the guide there gave them a leaf to eat that resulted in broken speech patterns afterwards, almost slurred speech patterns. And he was wondering, because now he has forgotten the name of what it was, he was wondering if perhaps I could give him an answer. Now, there's two options as far as I'm concerned in that area. The one is a silver cluster leaf tree, and the other is a leaf from a spike thorn tree. And both of those, is funnily enough, are what we were talking about earlier with the baby elephants that chew on them to get relief from their teething problems. And essentially what they do is they cause a little bit of localized numbness as well as a serious lack of saliva to reek. It makes your mouth really, really dry. Don't think we're going to be able to see it, but there is a bush baby in there. Stop and see where it went. So Sibu Sisu, that would be my answer as to your mystery tree. just saw him blinking at me now. Unfortunately, I think he's jumped off. Let me just check around. No, I think the bush baby that I just saw, jumped into the ground. Saw that flash of their red eyes. So my guess, Sibusiso, would be either the silver cluster leaf or possibly the cluster leaf. There we go. Please stay. Oh. There we go. We've just seen him jumping around. Oh, I lost him. Where did he go? Oh, there he is. There we go. Right in the middle of my light at the back there. Where did you go, little one? I just saw your tail. There's a lesser bush baby, or a lesser galago. Definitely one of my favorite little nocturnal creatures to see. Well done, Brian, for managing to get that at the end. They are incredibly, very agile little creatures, as you could see there in that brief view that we had, hopping from tree to tree almost faster than we can keep up with them. This one appears to have disappeared off further into the block. But wonderful little creatures. The smallest primate that we have in the Sabi Sands. We get two different types. We get the greater or the larger galago, or greater bush baby, which is much, much bigger. And I have certainly yet to see one here. I've actually yet to see one in quite a long time. And then you get the tiny little one, the small primate, the smaller galago. And as I said, probably one of my favorite little nocturnal animals, just because they are so terribly cute. And I have heard stories that they have a particular fondness, probably due to the sugars, but they have a particular fondness for alcohol and whiskey in particular. And I've heard of bush babies that have been hand raised and kept in lodges that will often terrorize the guests who are sitting at the bar. There were lots of Ellies around here earlier, so I'm going to drive nice and carefully. And Virginia's picked up on the fact that I'm having a little bit of an arm workout this evening between holding the spotlight, trying not to shine straight into the lodge, as well as driving off-road. So Virginia, absolutely. It's definitely necessary though. The last place that I was working at, we used to do manual labor at least twice a week, and I was walking with a rifle for 6 hours, maybe 4 times a week. So my arms definitely need the exercise wherever I can get it. Nice. Checking, or trying to check really, really closely and carefully into the drainage lines in this area. When I heard her call, I guessed that it was somewhere off to my left in here, but she hasn't called that I've heard since. We're still not giving up hope of a quick glimpse of Karula before the end of the sunset safari. Now, it has been quite the day and quite the week in terms of lion updates and lion drama happening here around Djuma, Arathusa and Simbambili. And Sarah from Ohio, welcome to the Sunset Safari. Sarah was wondering, if Junior left the Nkuhuma Pride, would that make the lionesses more submissive to the Birmingham boys, or would they continue to be aggressive and come into conflict with them? And I'm honestly, Sarah, I'm not too sure. I don't think that Junior is necessarily the cause of their aggression. I don't think that they're feeling particularly protective of him in any kind of way. It might have been that the sub-adults were just the wrong age, which resulted in the adult females trying to rally around them and protect them. So maybe we might see a drop in aggression from the Nkuhumas now that both of those young sub-adult females have been killed. It's very, very sad, and I know that we are all very much hoping, for the sake of the Nkuhuma Pride, that they do submit to the Birmingham boys, and that the Birmingham boys start to feel a little bit more relaxed and can settle down and start ruling as they should as the dominant Pride members of this area. But it was a wonderful afternoon for me. I love spending time with Ellies, so that's always a special moment. And now we have a really good starting place for tomorrow morning's sunrise safari. I'm sure that whoever is out tomorrow morning will be heading here. And don't forget to keep an eye on the Djuma Dam camera this evening. It could well be that Karula is going to make her way back towards this area. We know that she loves it here. Hopefully you will all get a chance to see her. I know I'm certainly keen. It's been a long time since I've had a chance to see Karula. It has been quite the eventful day. I'm very grateful to Brent for rescuing us in terms of our battery issues. I'm glad that we didn't have to finish a little bit earlier, and it was absolutely wonderful to see that very special little hyena cub again, who is definitely one of my favorite characters in this drama that we live out here. A big thank you to Brian for his fantastic camera work, and to Tara and Nikki NFC and Eugene for all of his technical genius, and for the walking team for going out and working on all of getting our bushwalk sorted. Definitely an exciting time ahead. So goodbye to you guys, and a big thank you. We will catch up with you for the sunrise safari tomorrow.